Hey neighbors, this is Anarchy in the 603, and if you're new to my channel, which, judging that I'm going to be uploading this somewhere first before I do anything else after I'm done, a lot of you will be watching this for the first time. But if you're not new to the channel, welcome back to Postcards from Your Philly Neighborhood Anarchist. Absolutely nobody's favorite D-tier production quality, off-dome, lightly edited, typically unscripted, dispatch off-dome from wherever I'm sitting to wherever you are right now. Currently, I'm sitting outside where my brain cooks the best, and that happens to be where I do my best cooking, and that is the mental cooking that I have to do in order to get my words to taste right before they come out of my mouth. You know how autistic people tend to rehearse things? I don't need to rehearse them. I'm that hyperlinguistic, hyperlexical, and I've got a brain like a dictionary and encyclopedia and thesaurus all rolled into one. So I can stew my words overnight in a quickness that comes out so that they are faster than the flying furious fists of the Wu-Tang Clan. They are for the children and the culture. But what I haven't been using my words to do a lot lately is post on Facebook, because frankly, guys, I have been avoiding social media while I sit outside, largely looking like I'm doing nothing, but really in a state of deep depression because my body needed the deepest rest it ever has needed. At the end of COVID lockdowns, y'all may recall that I had put up some notices on Facebook that I had lost my job due to an incredibly overwhelming manic episode that kicked into high gear, and I really didn't have the capacity to be able to explain it at the time, but I do now. And basically what happened was my brain broke, y'all. Nutshell story is don't fuck up your kids. But ultimately, I survived a childhood that was so extreme in the damages that it did to my nascent brain as it was developing. And you know, you're not really fully cooked till your mid-20s. Well, guess what? Current research shows that maybe, and I'm actually pretty sure, given the way that we change once we hit our 30s and find it so freeing to no longer give a flying fuck what anyone thinks about us or how we live our lives, human brain development is now thought to not stop until you're in your early 30s or so. And yeah. And so if you wonder what happens when you take a nascent little brain, a tiny human that is still yet learning what it is to be human, just a human being out there being and doing their best, as we all do, what happens when you put them through the kind of pressures that make coal scream? Well, sometimes it cracks, but sometimes a sufficiently strong enough bit of carbon gets compressed and you get a diamond. And right at the end of COVID, this diamond fractured, and I have been putting it together ever since, because after a massively revelatory time in which I drove past my familial house, that nightmare home, that graveyard of crushed hopes, broken dreams, and squashed innocence, well, guess what, y'all? For the first time in my whole life, I did not feel anger, I did not feel sadness, I did not feel grief, I did not feel melancholy. I felt nothing, and it was the most freeing feeling I've ever felt in my entire friggin' life. And guess what? Just as my brain was trying to wrap itself around the brand new concept of not giving a flying fuck about what was done to me, because god damn it, I love myself now, and it took me a whole long 40-something years to get to that point, I tell you what. And thank God I had the capacity to handle it. Well, Leo d'Entremont. Respect on his name. One of the most incredible autodidacts that I have ever known. A polymathic polyglot. Singing like he's spitting hot. An author. A cosplayer. A husband. A brother. A son. And a surrogate sibling. I found out that he passed the very same weekend that my brain had broken open like a freshly cracked egg, raw and vulnerable, but instead of a squishy, squashy, unfertilized yolk, there was a brand new chick inside, and it was almost crushing, almost literally crushing, to the dawning realization of the revelations that I've been keeping inside of myself for this whole time, that it nearly broke me. And I got almost literally, kind of metaphorically, but by the transitive property still true, struck by lightning, in that I had quite literally a brainstorm. Because what happens when you have an organic meat suit? Well, let me pause for a second and tell you. Well, pardon the interruption, but basically when you are a thinking, living, sentient, feeling creature with an organic meat suit that is the avatar that your brain travels around in, which is quite literally electrically powered organics, and you have neurons that fire with tiny little sparks of electricity, but those little neuronal connections are either not allowed to make the connections that they need in order for you to process the shit that's going on in your life, or you got some faulty wiring where there is some like breaks in your insulation. What happens? Seizures. Me, I looked like I was fragile like a flower, but motherfuckers, I was more fragile than a bomb. And when I was a teenager, I had a series of 6 seizures that ended with me nearly drowning in a river, and then having another seizure not long after in the classroom. And my family could no longer ignore anymore the electrocution that was happening in my brain, sort of an electroshock therapy of telling me that I could no longer let myself get crushed by the circumstances that made me, and I was going to have to get out and grow and survive. And so I did. And long and rocky road since then, but ups and downs being what they are overall, at the end, when I'm standing at the mean in the middle, well, I mean that I'm actually doing pretty well overall if you give the overall curves of the median a look from a long distance. And given that I'm speaking at such a speed, and I happen to be speaking as lucidly as possible, hi there, birds, given the lightning speed of my brain, well, I guess you can understand what happens when you have a revelation that is so goddamn big that what happens is you have a flash of connection where all of these neurons fire off in your brain at once. You get this concept that comes together in a flash, but yet all the necessary steps in the middle to get from A to B, well, you just jumped from like to Z, and I have difficulty wrapping my tongue around that letter unless I'm singing, because zippity-doo-dah, there is no letter Z in the Tagalog language, which was my mother tongue. But I digress. Anyway, that being said, my brain broke when I got the news, and Janice, if you're listening to this, and I hope you are, I deeply apologize for how weird I got, but my God, was the mental mindstorm that I had something like the likes unto which I have never experienced before, and I hope to Christ I never experience again. Because if right now I'm currently at a 1.75 on the internal scale of my mental mindquakes that I call my bitchter scale, well, guess what? Leo's loss, that was like a 10 plus the fist of a benevolent, but yet at the same time cruel God, because nature doesn't give a shit what happens to you. Nature just be naturing you. And Leo was always faster than all of us, wasn't he? And I just had to make a leap and catch up. And well, I guess you're all probably worrying and wondering what's going on with me. And for the last 4 years, I've been fighting for my disability, and I am finally feeling not so disabled, but just inaccessible, because I haven't been able to access the kind of methods that I would need to communicate myself clearly, because I can't ever get these thoughts out fast enough. But I have found a place, a workshop in Laconia, where I have been hanging out with a couple of dudes and another old dude who has a bunch of friends that are old dudes, and he's a wicked solid dude. And even though they don't really understand me, all they are is worried about my well-being when I come in having been at a 0 in the darkest winter of the soul that I have had in a long fucking time, people. And then the very next day when I come back in for a fresh week of hanging out for free, working alongside them just so I can learn the craft of what they're doing in there, I came at flying at about a good 75 miles an hour at a solid clip while I was in turbo on a clear day on the Autobahn, and there is no traffic. And I have plenty of highway ahead of me, and I'm going real slow Autobahn style, but guess what? If I could and wanted to, I could easily get up to 95 and not be taking a breath. And all they've been is worried about me, and they made accommodations. I even worked down in a basement working for them while I worked on, well, what I'm about to read you. And anyway, now that it's been 10 minutes, I'm going to sit here and hydrate for a second and take a breath and pull myself together so that I can actually read something before the sunlight fails me and I have to finish this tomorrow. One moment. The following was dictated via speech-to-text into my phone, starting as an email and then switching to a Google Doc when it was determined that this was going to be a big one. Text has only been lightly edited for clarity and to complete thought strings that got skipped in the recording of this mental record. Hey, Doc, we've been talking for a long time, since pretty much the time that we started my sessions, that I really needed to write down my own autobiography. And while it's been a goal of mine from the start, I wasn't able to truly conceptualize how I could wrestle this massive project to the mat sustainably and in a way that'll make sense to the way I operate. Here's the thing. My concretely rooted yet ever so fleeting thoughts is nearly impossible to catch on the fly as a fragile, ragged-winged butterfly that is exhaustedly yet determinedly strivingly towards nectar, or a moth struggling to flutter upward toward the luminous light of the moon. The thing is, I've never been able to figure out how to do it all in one neat go because there's so much goddamn shit that I need to do in such little time. And anyway, Doc, I know that I'm pretty manic right now, and frankly, I actually am fairly in control. I believe that I've actually managed to fully unmask at this point because I've been telling myself... Gonna take a breath here. So, I see I've gotten ahead of myself and accidentally not recorded that last part. So, let's start again. I've been telling myself that this upcoming week has the potential to end this war and finally win it for once and for fucking all, or for as long as possible. Anyway, I knew this was going to be hitting a manic episode for this hearing coming up in a little under a couple of weeks now. Author's note, statement accurate at time of writing. As of today, we have 5 days until D-Day, and I'm running on pure, spiteful, yet somehow joyful logic and determination in a fire lit under my ass bigger than the wildfires that hit LA last month. But I didn't know whether or not I would be able to control myself. Well, I'm done sitting in the closet. And I've been staging myself to get up and go to work for a long time, dude, and you know what? Finally found the best workshop to do it, and they're really good with workplace accommodations, let me tell you what. Anyway, Doc, all of this is to say it's taking me less than 3 full minutes to compose all of this to you via speech to text, and yet you can still see that even here, while I'm wandering around the cobbler shop, changing my shoes after spontaneously having decided that I needed to feel more grounded and feel the rungs of the bar stool, workshop stool, because it's one of those ones that's got like the logo on it from some auto shop. I don't remember which right now. I think it's Goodyear, but... Anyway, they're really good with these workplace accommodations, and I'm working for them today down in the basement, giving them the gift of my time and efforts while they receive the gift of my silence and yet still some productivity. And I'm really trying to repay them their belief in me. So here's the deal. I started that YouTube channel and now I've got 46 subscribers. I've been slogging through it even through the deepest part of my worst depression that I've had since this new chapter in my life started at the dawn of my nervous breakthrough back when all this began. Now, I'm trying not to get too ahead of the plot here, but fact is, neuroplasticity is a phenomenally fascinating thing, and I think that a lot of what's been happening every time I have a manic spiral is that my brain starts to make the connections that it needed to make that have been lying dormant for far too long. The way I see it, that extra electrical activity up in the brain is the brain literally firing up long disused neurons, and what are you smelling? That's the dust that's burning off the heating elements as they get up back to speed. Let me cook. Kind of mixing my metaphors here, but I think you see what I mean, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, I'm not sure, but I'm about to show you. Don't know if you can read that. 23,543 words, 124,947 characters, 695 sentences, 191 paragraphs, 94 minutes, 10 seconds reading time, grade level is college. Anyway, you know what I'm always saying? I'm a multidisciplinary, multimedia, wicked slow artist with a lightning fast brain. Not necessarily in those words, but that's the accurate description for what I am, and I think I finally figured it all out. All that above, that's everything that I've written the last 5 days, y'all. Remember my vision that I had when I had all this start? When all this started of a 501c3 nonprofit that was initially inspired by my revelatory moment, what an understatement that is, immediately followed by the loss of my brother Leo, the sudden steel beam splitting screaming inside of me of an entire skyscraper suddenly collapsing from inside, the immediate hit by a fucking Lockheed C-130 Hercules fully loaded up with fuel and a complete load of 5 fully equipped M1 Abrams tanks in the cargo hold, impact upon hearing his mother Janice, such an incredible woman, you'd love her, I sure as hell do. Janice, universe bless, I cannot imagine the strength it took to make that phone call, and oh my dear sky above, did I let loose a blast of utter 150 out of my 10 on a my internal earthquake measurement device, the Bichter scale, because that's the moment my entire world, my entire brain had just opened up so new and raw and vulnerable with revelation, and then boom, here comes the airplane, kids, straight into my face. And yet, I was so stricken with sudden inspiration from just knowing him for more than half my life and observing him often from afar, and yet still avidly and actively following his life through the power of social media, right? Well, I think I finally figured out how to do it. All of it. Everything I've wanted to make happen for myself in my life since as far back as I can remember, because I've been wandering around picking up other people's trash forever, and at this point I'm sick and tired of waiting. And I've reduced, reused, and recycled literally every single bit of it that I could, discarding only that which I determined truly had no value except for as fertilizer to further fuel my flames, propelling me out of that nightmare house where my early childhood dreams were slowly stamped out of me like an angrily ground out stogie stub. I have had enough. I've been waiting all my life for the world to make communication access more, accessible to me. I was working in the shop basement yesterday because my extremely precisely worded stream of consciousness mutterings into my phone dictation was a bit too distracting the prior 2 days. And we've got this massive project we've been working on, and quite frankly, if I didn't grit my teeth and play through the pain, unless there was virtually almost to the point of literally no way in hell I could even drag me through my commute, even though through the skin of my teeth and my chapped, cracked, dehydrated, and abraded lips. I mean, I'm the one who had my entire brain crack open and have all these neuronal connections fire up at once like an old PC that's been kept stored in a fortunately dry basement for a wicked long time, and has been left to get an inch or so of dust on a Saturday, and still, whilst in a sustained 8.5 on the 10 Bichter scale for an entire month. Why did I say Saturday? I don't know. On a shelf, that's what I meant, shelf. For almost an entire month, to the point where Jay had to hire one of my son's friends to be my extra hands and watchful eyes to keep me safe from myself and my state of fragile instability, not fragile like a flower, but fragile like a Moab, a massive ordnance air blast bomb, aka the mother of all bombs. That's got a targeting system gone haywire, and it may just go off if jostled the wrong way. If that was a 10, my friendship breakup with Randa was an 8.5 at most, Scotty's death peaking at a 7.5 but averaging at a 5. Well, I've been a self-sustaining, oscillating sine wave of mania running steadily but tidally, cyclically inside of my entire being, surfing this wave from the moment I wake up till the time I go to sleep. Throughout the day, I'll go from a 1, which is a wicked good day where all the lights are green and the parking lots are near empty and you get surprised by the person in front of you paying for your coffee whilst in line at the convenience store, up to a 3.5 to 3.50. I'm currently at a 2.5 right now, you guys, and as I talk to you and look in the mirror and I'm not reading this in the state that I was reading it with my rented emotions that I had, which were real emotion. Okay. When I read, I rent my emotions from the jars inside of me, but when I write, I'm really feeling it in that moment. Anyway, I'm at a 2.5 right now. I chill out when I talk to you. Back where I was going, up to a 3.25 to 3.50, where I'm in the basement cranking out staccato yet crystal clear sentences out of my mouth and off my tongue with hardly a trip at all at a pace that sounds like it's listening to an audiobook at 2.5 speed, to the point that Jim took me aside for a few minutes out of sheer concern to ask whether or not I'm okay. And I had to break it down to him that, oh yeah, I am more than okay. I am just fed up. And I have had so much to say bottled up inside of me for so long, and yet no idea of where to start. And then, eureka. So what I started doing, instead of speech to texting, walls of text to all my friends and family, where I'm trying to finally get out my chest all the things that I think about them and know about them and love about them because of the connections they make in my brain. What I'm doing is I'm opening a Google Doc, one for each person that's living rent-free in my heart, and I'll add to it whenever I feel the desire to spill my soul to them and spin a yarn for them. I'm compiling all the walls of text I've sent to each individual since the start of this revving up of my current renewed engine and energy, and starting every person's personal letter with an edited and expanded copy-pasting of my walls of text to them, with a paraphrasing of their general response to indicate where the conversation might go next. Keeps it from being one-sided. I'm going to pause this. I'll be right back. This way, instead of info dumping at them and hoping they'll process all of this as quickly as I can spin it out, now they can receive my words as written chapters, and I'm going to consider each info dump to an individual as a subchapter. Ultimately, when I get my timeline caught up to now in this autobiography that I've been writing in this Soul My Whole Time doc, once I get each subchapter finished and edited to the point where I can speak the true flavors of what I've been cooking for everyone and fully expand on what I keep on dumping at them so rapid fire in my text to them thus far, I can just send them one link at a time with them having view and comment but no edit access. That way they can have the text versions of what I'm saying about them to them and never lose the words I left behind, even if Google or any other cloud service were to fail. After that, I film myself reading every chapter, one chapter per video, and upload it to my YouTube as part of a new, yet soon-to-be recurring series. I've always said that my people were so special that I wish I knew more people so that I could tell more people all the wonderful things that I think in my heart about them, and I found my way. I've been gestating this particular mind baby for nearly 4 years now, doing my research by observation and seeking information from whatever source I could find it, compiling everything inside of me and harboring it in near silence until I could actually produce something tangible to prove that these aren't just delusions of grandiosity. Let's see. All right, so you know what they call someone who gets their ideas all at once, nearly complete? A visionary. You know what they call someone who takes that vision and puts in the sweat equity and back-breaking, knee-aching work involved to make it actually goddamn happen? An entrepreneur. If nobody's done it like this before you, a pioneer. A broke bitch who has a large community of friends who are generous of spirit, empathetic, and believe in her magic to the point where they will give what they have, however humble yet glowing with kindness that offer may be. And you know what? As a second-generation immigrant kid who's the child of two people who came from massive families that were raised in poverty and had grandparents who survived on one side the Great Depression, on the other side being Filipino anywhere in the last 600 years, and both sides survived World War II through Vietnam era worldwide fuck shit happening in their home regions. Yeah, the only trickle-down economics I've ever gotten has been of the hand-me-down kind, like when the gold rush prospectors would go pan for gold in streams. They pan out the gold and their shit and refuse trickles downstream. But yet, even though it may have been easily and gladly tossed out refuse, better than that or the landfill or Goodwill, right? Yeah, I mean, right, but it's the spirit of the giving that changes one's view of said gift, but I digress. Even though I've been taking people's hand-me-downs and picking up other people's trash, cleaning up other people's messes my whole life, I've found a ton of treasures in those piles of garbage that if they weren't handed to me, I would pick up on my own anyway, as clearly nobody else was going to do it. And if not me, who? Somebody's got to. Well, I've been reducing, reusing, and recycling my internal bank of information enough to freestyle filibuster for hours, and yes, you're goddamn right, I'm proud of that, and no, I don't get tired. I've signed into 2 one-hour sessions at the library computer while I'm out and about in town just to sit and type this instead of speaking at the same pace or faster on my phone. It's easier to edit this way when you have a brain like mine and the world has made it clear that they ain't gonna help you be heard regardless of how important your message. I'm doing it all myself, Doc, and I'm doing it with my phone, with my forged supplies, and the kindness of the people I've met along the way that just accepted me despite my strange and spontaneous outbursts of metaphorical flavors of the writing that I create inside of me that I've always been full to bursting with, because the fact is, I've been an author since the beginning. I was taught to read at 3, but I was largely self-taught because it really didn't take them long beyond simply showing me the letters and the phonics of the sounds that each phonetic combination made, and I was immediately off and running. Of course, that also meant that nobody ever read me a bedtime story again, not for the rest of my childhood, and that childhood and young adolescence was a long and lonely one. Anyway, first thing I ever wrote, self-published, was a 3-page document, not including the covers in my rickety handwriting, of a retelling of a Brothers Grimm or Mother Goose story that I cannot quite recall right now, but it might have been 3 Little Pigs. Anyway, let me get some more strips I need to trim. I'm working down here. Anyway, yeah, 3 years old, published author, self-published, but I had the drive at 3 enough, and I loved books enough that I wanted to write them. I've been wanting to be a podcaster for a hot minute, too, and guess what, Doc? Filipino people, wherever we go, we tend to stay poor where we are because we're sending the bulk of our riches back home to the people that we treasure the most. You ever wonder where I get my giving spirit? Giving spirit comes from my culture, the one in which I was brought up, the one in which I was collectively parented, which is some of the only parenting that I ever got because my parents were too damn broke and not of their own choices, but sure as hell chose to stay that way, which was their own choice, to actually raise me right, to parent me, that is. Nurturing instead of just disciplining, nourishing instead of feeding, giving a home instead of merely providing a house. Remember, I'm hyperlexic and hyperlingual and hyperliteral. I mean what I say, and I use every word in my internal mental thesaurus if that's what it takes to convey the information I got locked away inside of me. I speak literal things that are couched in the poetic, densely layered doublespeak of simile and metaphor and analogy, so I've always had a novel inside of me, Doc. I've always wanted to write stories like a novelist, but my life has been far more interesting with dramatic twists and turns than anything I could have possibly thought up on my own. So instead, I've always had my autobiography inside of me, and I couldn't really unlock how I could possibly get it all out in time. And, I'm almost going to hit 50 soon. I'll be 47 this year, and I don't have long before you retire either. Therefore, my proposal is this. Not only am I writing my autobiography via open letters that I'm reading aloud, but also I've been wanting to actually finish school beyond a first failed semester for nearly 30 years. But money? Where? Time? It's going to be a hot minute before I'm even in a place to mentally apply. But damn it, I have an idea. And frankly, I'm sick and tired of waiting to go to a university and get myself into debt when the fact is I graduated from the University of Hard Knocks long ago. Well, it's time for my postgraduate studies, the University of Harder Knocks, so to speak, and I would like for you to oversee my thesis because I've had a theory brewing inside of me for a long time and I'm trying very hard to find ways to show proof positive of my supposition. Linda, I think I may have hit my eureka moment. Autism is not a disorder. She has said it herself. It's amazing. The fact that I could even survive this long is the raw intellect that I had to harness in order to survive. It is an evolution. What is a genetic mutation aside from evolution in action? Darwin observed the changes in the beaks of finches residing on different islands of the Galapagos. Those mutations that were not successful did not succeed in spreading their genes. Those that were ended up with finches bearing beaks that were significantly different than that of their cousins in the neighboring islands. They had adapted to the different kinds of food available on the islands where they each nested, and eventually you have two species of finch. What is autism but a mutation within a certain cluster of genes that results in human behavioral variants that are distinctly deviated from the mean? It is entirely speciesist, short-sighted, and sapiocentric to believe that we are exempt from the evolutionary process. There are many traits that autistics that are wonderful gifts to share with the world if only we had the accessibility to get there. And also, guess what? Chromosomal mutations and neuroplastic mutations actually happened in order for us to evolve, and they happened, like genetic mutations in our code happen in order for evolution to push forward, and faster moving ones do pay a price. What is that price? Shit like this, shit like me, where I can't always function. Anyway, we have been denied accessibility for far too long, have also been subject to invisibility due to underdiagnosis, and beyond that, silence due to the invisibility and appalling lack of self-advocacy organizations out there for and by us. Autism speaks, fuck you, you don't speak for me, not for any of my other autistic friends. In fact, we have thoughts. Well, that's another podcast idea of mine, and damn it, my ideal co-host for said podcast idea, well, he died of reasons I have still yet to have learned and may never will. Well, he died, and that was 4 years ago now, and eventually I'm going to find the right person to go down that particular avenue with me, but I digress. And I believe that it is time to shut our own internal ableism and step forward as what we are. Essentially, people who are undergoing the janky trial and error, long-term process, evolution of the speciesization of humanity. I'll be happy to uncover evidence that proves me wrong, but as yet, I haven't seen an ounce of research that doesn't prove me right, that essentially, well, anyway. And I know, Doc, that's oftentimes when I get talking like this, you tell me that I need to pull back inside myself a little bit and think about, well, of course, folks are going to glom onto one another in a like-minded community. And folks, if you see someone wearing a Godzilla t-shirt, then suffice to say they likely enjoy Japanese culture, and in specific, and at the very minimum, the classic kaiju films of post-war era Japan, as they sprung from the fertile creative minds and limited budgets of their impoverished economy in the late 1950s/early 1960s through their eventual economic reascendance in the 1980s. What is that? What is fashion, if not the same type of sexual community and social plumage display that indicates that one bird is ready to find another member of their flock? We mostly hairless humans do not have a lot of natural plumage, and therefore we must use our clothing as a socio-sexual, economical, sexual, signifiers of how we wish to be perceived and what community we wish to be involved in within our particular species subgroup of humanity. And autistic people do this flamboyantly, either by wearing all of our special interests like a flag, or caring so little for fashion that you care little what color it even is, as long as it's comfy, and everywhere in between. But we tend to be pretty easy to spot even without clothes. I've said it before. I've said it 1,000 times. Every person I've met that has given me that frisson of recognition has either been verified autistic or someone who has eventually got it verified but had no idea at first. My nose for this has been unerring, and that's even for people who I've only met in passing or got reacquainted with after their diagnosis, and they were like, yep, big shock, I'm autistic. It's like when I came out to my friends in high school as queer, and they were like, no kidding. Fun fact, we have the autistic community have higher percentages of LGBTQIA plus folks, and they are more often than not hyperlexic from as soon as their toddler brains can read, if they don't have a difficulty like dyslexia that holds them back. I have no idea if there will be any university willing to accept this, and so I've decided to hell with them. I'm doing it myself. I'm going to lay out to you in this document my doctoral thesis based on my extensive observations and proven by analogy via autobiographical letters written to the close personal people in my life who are alive right now. One moment, I hear someone calling me. Okay, I'm about to lose daylight, so I'm going to crank through this here. I have no idea if there will be any university willing to accept this, and so I've decided to hell with them. I'm doing it myself. I'm going to lay out to you in this document my doctoral thesis based on my extensive observations and proven by analogy via autobiographical letters written to the close personal people in my life who are alive right now, and who receive my info dumps of text and overwhelmingly disarrayed spray of shotgun blast fast poetry written in real time because I'm literally standing here just lighting straps of nylon briefly on fire for a project to contain a bird of prey before we let it fly in the way that the good universe intended for an all too brief period of time. And I'm sure far shorter than it would prefer, but that's for damn sure, but I digress. And sent to you once they're done being edited and added to for clarity, and after I've emailed each chapter and subchapter to you as they've done, I'm going to record them on my YouTube channel. I'm also launching a podcast and recording that with two of my people, Cal in Tucson and M, Muffin's mom, but that's a topic for when we're talking about my plans when I see you again. Hopefully that'll be an income generator for us, a rising tide to lift our little boats out of the struggle sea, but it'll also be the income to save towards my eventual 501c3 nonprofit, the organization and eventually physical space that we call the brick and mortar face of the community and creative studio that we're calling Anarchist Incubator Industries. Picture this, a maker, movement, performance, and fine arts space where the community can come and create stuff for free. Music studio, movement space, art and craft supplies, plus a whole library of reference books, all of it for free to use and loan out like a library or to create with there. The only charge? Come and help. Donate supplies, maintain the space, bring snacks, organize a class, something, anything. You put in the time to help keep the space running one way or the other, and yes, cash always welcome. Got to participate in the mandatory tithing to our hyper-capitalist god kings, after all. Maybe you find the treasure you need or borrow the instrument you couldn't afford. Maybe your grandma dies and you pass all over your yarn. Maybe you just come in and hang out, sweep on occasion. Whatever works, whatever's clever, whatever you can capably and sustainably with no hardship or struggle to you, just contribute. An all-ages space accessible to anyone who wants to check us out and see what we're all about. And best part, all those bits of creative output, feel free to sell them in the Ibunga Darna Gallery. We're not sure the split between gallery and artist yet, 50-50 for now, but consensus within the community may change that. The artists can get paid for a guaranteed place to sell their stuff, but also the proceeds that go back to the incubator will all be used to put directly into our at-risk youth outreach programs. That's where we start. Can you imagine what a safe haven that could have been to me and other weird kids like me back in our day? You show a kid an idea and give them even a narrow path to get there, and if they love it enough, they'll take whatever path they can to make happen to get there. And I want to open that avenue wide open. My late brother was, among other things, a largely autodidactic polymath in the arts and crafts, and so am I, and that's why we got on like peas and carrots, and why he got on with damn near everyone he met, and anyone who didn't like him, chances were high I wouldn't like those randos either. And he, back in his high school years, he really would have loved a space like that, and I miss him every day. I really do miss you, Leo. God damn it, I really do, but I hope that I make you proud. My manic episodes are kind of like that, you know? It's when I finally feel awake enough inside of this constantly rattling chassis of a body of mine, continually racked with pain, both psychological and physical, making it so fucking difficult to think that I can't even get my words out. But I'm standing here with a bottle and a half of Wellesley Farms purified water in front of me, a stack of nylon straps that I sewed and have trimmed and have checked for quality myself, pulling the duds aside as culls as though they were lobsters missing a claw, and half of one of my ridiculously sized Cumberland Farms I smoke a cold brew coffees that I customized for myself and continue reusing the same discardable, quote-unquote, disposable single-use plastic cup that I will rinse and wash and reuse every time and time and time again, because I have yet to find an insulated one that is of the same fluid ounce size inside that will also fit in my cup holder. It also saves me a shit ton of money that I don't have, because instead of almost $3 for my drink every day, I pay only $1.83. You know how when we've had manic episodes before, when we go into therapy sessions with you and chit-chat, and I was always running a mile a minute with my heartbeat going like a metronome that's got the slider all the way down towards the bottom near the swing mechanism? Well, right now I'm beating at a nice solid 4/4 time with occasional tempo increases and decreases, but it's kind of like a foxtrot at those times or a waltz at others or something. Like I'm ballroom dancing alone with my own words in the basement of a workshop where I feel wicked comfortable, and I can only hope that they're okay with me being this crazy, but the fact is I'm still making sense, aren't I? What I'm saying here is I felt for a long time it's been really important that I fully unmask, and here I am. I'm no longer spinning wobbly plates on sticks in my brain. I'm operating like a DJ who's an amateur, but yet only because she's rusty. And eventually, if I finally manage to make the world accessible enough for me and organized enough in my own way, so that I can utilize my own goddamn language for once and explain to these fucking people for the last fucking final time why it is in excruciating detail for them, not me, because hell yeah, words come this easily to me, and they are about to find out that I finally am deemed broken enough by the SSA, federal representatives with the social safety meant to catch members like me of this society that deliberately ignored me and the plight of countless children like me to go chasing after the specters of Satanists instead of looking at the real problem of childism and extreme child abuse. They want to know how how fucking crazy I am, Doc? Crazy doesn't always mean delusional. Big plans and big dreams don't always mean grandiosity. Yeah, I've been spinning the future vision of this big friggin' plan this whole goddamn time, but it's not like I'm trying to do it all by myself anymore. Work smarter, not harder, kids, right? Well, this is how I'm working, and this is what I'm working with, Doc. I know you're not a doctor, but that's how I think of you in my head, Doc, and I'm going to title your letter now, because this is your chapter that I'm starting right here. Unedited, raw, fresh from the dome, except for where I've had to change a couple of obvious speech-to-text mistranslations and add a bunch of text to clarify where I can. I'm on a mission. I'm writing my own mission statements, and I'm my misses to the world, and there's a lot more to this story than what I've got going on right now. But this is just the first chapter I'm sending. There's so much more to come, and I'm done waiting. And I'm actually even stopping to add more to this document since the last time I picked it up, a little over 2 hours ago, because I have realized the only way I can tell this story properly, do it any justice, and above all, actually be able to withstand the emotional and psychological onslaught that will come from turning over the stones of those old memories down there at the pile. A lot of sewage and settlement settles at the bottoms of the piles of the gravel down there, especially when there's a big impact crater from where the initial boulder broke in the first place. I need to retrace my long and winding path. Let's face it, the meandering motorway that my life has gone along is about as convoluted as that of the dashed lines on a map in that old Family Circus newspaper cartoon where one of the kids will be shown leaving a trail of destruction and chaos, benign but nonetheless still chaos in their wake. In order to make sense of any of it, draw any of the conclusions together in a way, or in connections in a way that'll make sense to anybody, let alone myself, I'm going to have to work from the now, the immediate spot in space and time from which I always operate. Staying present in this moment it's important for me to be able to maintain my sea legs, so to speak. And retrospectives, they can refresh you on what you've known and remind you of how long you've known it. I'm going to start moving forward in physical time while writing chronologically from now back in literal autobiographical time. And until I can reach the things that are furthest back in the recesses of the caverns of the pain that I have had to harbor silent inside of my stomach and soul, deep down in my guts, eating away at me from the inside like a metaphorical cancer for far too long. And guess what? I'm out of daylight, y'all. This has been Anarchy in the 603. I've got to edit this video and get it off my SD card so that I don't overload my phone. I'm out.